Hey guys, my name is Mannequin and welcome back to Master EDM with FL Studio. So today we're going to talk about spectrum analyzers, or actually one spectrum analyzer, and then a whole bunch of different EQs. We're going to use those for mastering, and we're pretty much done here with limiter number 6. We'll get into it one or two more times just to kind of make sure that our master is completely ready and solidified. But for now, we're going to mostly work on EQ and compression and metering and stuff like that for the next couple of videos. So we won't touch on limiter number 6 again for a while. So you remember that we've had this Fruity dB meter up here, just kind of watch our levels and see them bounce up and down to make sure that we're not, really low or really high and peaking above anything. So that's why we've had this Fruity dB meter, but today we're going to replace this with an extra plugin. Now this plugin is not a default plugin, but it is free. Once again, hey, we're only using free stuff. How convenient. These are Vox and Go plugins. Check the description for a link and just get all of them. I'm not even kidding you. Get all of them. They're great. They all sound amazing. So I really suggest that you get these just to partially because we're going to be using them. Second of all, because they sound amazing and they're free. So why not? So grab those. And today we're going to be using, first off, we're going to be using Span as a replacement for Fruity dB meter because Span has this meter right here already. So we don't need to have that other meter in place of this. Now, by default, Span looks a little like this. So you'll notice it's kind of like curved and everything, and then it goes spikier up until we get to the high end. And that's generally, it's typical layout when it comes to EQs. But one of the things that's cool about this EQ is you could set the mode to high res, and that does nothing. Now the reason is because I have this set to hold. Now if I play this back again, boom, now it's spiky all the way from the end to the beginning, or the low to the high. It makes a little bit more sense when I say it that way. And you can tell that we can now see with a lot more precision what's going on here. So now your computer might not be able to handle the high res depending on how slow of a computer you have. If you can't handle the high res, just use the default. It should work fine. And just stick with that one because it's better than the spectrum analyzer in Parametric Eq 2, and it keeps on jumping to that preset. I need to fix that. There we go. So, because this one is kind of like stupid, because you'll notice it just gets brighter where areas are peaked more instead of actually showing us this. So this one we could actually say, okay, so we are at 24.4 dB, and that's exactly where these little guys are. And these other ones over here are peaking more than that, and the less than that, et cetera, and stuff like that. This one, on the other hand, since it goes by brightness, and there's no actually like mathematical representation or lines or grids to show us anything, we just kind of have to guess what the levels are at. So it's kind of useless in that regard. I mean, it's nice to show you a general overview, but it's stupid in terms of like how useful it actually is. So I don't know why they did that. So we have the spectrum analyzer. We're going to just use this, kind of have it sitting in the corner, just kind of make sure we're not doing anything totally stupid. For the most part, though, we're still going to rely on our ears. So I said this video is going to be on EQs, and I haven't even gotten into EQs. But what we're going to talk about is the different types of EQs today. We're not actually going to use all the EQs because we don't have time to really get into EQing with all these after I talk about all this stuff. So we're mostly just going to talk about the different types, and then come on, give me all the different EQs. Don't put that one there. You go over here, and you go over there. Okay, sweet. So now we can see all of them. These are the 3 different types of EQs you'll run across. This one here is linear phase EQ, and this one's used for more kind of like mathematical, surgical sort of cuts and boosts and stuff. And it's designed to be to have a minimal amount of artifacts when you boost and cut things. Then I should rearrange these here. We have the regular EQ, which is designed to kind of emulate an analog EQ in some ways, so that we get this nice tonality to our EQ that sounds more natural, and it kind of pushes things around. So when I boost here, it's a little bit more. It generates some harmonics, and it's a little bit more broad in what it affects, as opposed to these ones, which are supposed to be rather precise. And then finally, we have our Overtone G Eq, which is it's designed similarly to the first, And but the functionality is very different. First of all, you'll notice here that we have left and right for our EQs. And actually, this one's tied to the left and right now. You can see A and B tied to left and right. But we could actually split them up, I believe, if we wanted to. But we're not going to worry about that. But anyway, the point is, this has a lot of faders. This one has a lot of faders, but we're actually only using half of them. That's what I'm trying to get to here. And so this one has a lot less faders. And when I boost up around here, instead of just boosting at 150 hertz, it does like this very spread out sort of boost that generates harmonics all over the place. Because this is an Overtone G Eq. It's not a regular equalizer. It's one that's designed to create these extra harmonics. So we kind of have like the least, the EQ that'll least affect the areas around a particular boost. Then we kind of have in the middle here, and then we finally have this one, which does a lot in terms of affecting other frequencies. Now, does that mean that the bands are the same width? No, definitely not. So this one, if we actually boost it up like this, it'd probably affect more area than this one. The reason is because this is a very wide band. We can adjust the width if we want to. We talked about EQs before, you know that. So I'm not talking about bandwidth. What I'm talking about is the generation of harmonics. This is where our little span comes in handy. So I'm going to pull these out of the way here. And actually, I'm just minimize them. That'll get them out of the way enough. So we have span here. And you can notice we have this little peak here, which is at G sharp. And if we move on to this little peak here, it's at D sharp. Now watch this. This one is at G sharp. And this one's at D sharp. So there's kind of like this reoccurring pattern. And what happens what causes that is we have one main tone, and that particular tone will generate harmonics. So that because otherwise it'd just be a pure sine wave. I think I talked about this a little bit in waveforms when I was talking about synthesizers. But if you have a sine, it's going to be a very clean tone. And that's because it's mostly just that one peak there, and it kind of trails off for the most part a little bit. And it's just focused on one particular peak. And you can kind of notice here, we have up right above my mouse, it says G sharp. And that's kind of what I was going off. And you would notice then that each of these frequencies corresponds to a particular tone. And these are all sine waves. As we get into different waveforms, we generate harmonics. If this is jogging your memory, that should be pretty good. And those harmonics change the tone of the sound. So it's just not this pure sine wave. And by stacking them, we get different tones. Now, why am I talking about this? It's directly relevant to these different EQs. So this Marvel G Eq does not try to generate harmonics. It tries to stay within its little boundary, and that's why it's a linear phase EQ. Now, when we go to Fruity Parametric EQ, it generates some of them, but not quite as much as it could. This one's more focused on just kind of getting a natural tone out of your boosts and cuts. And then finally, Overtone G Eq is designed to generate a lot of these. So as I said, we're not going to have time today to go into actually using all these and setting them all up, but I will talk about the different aspects for each of them and how they play out in a master. So this one is very precise, as I've said, and usually what we'll use it for is doing drastic cuts or cuts in the bass. So one of the reasons you do drastic cuts is, let's say you're doing a regular acoustic mix with a regular band, and they have a drum, and this drum just goes tung, tung, tung. That would be super annoying, and you don't want that in a mix. So what you do is you'd find that frequency, and I don't believe this one actually allows you to directly line up the frequencies. You could tell this one, you could actually shuffle them around like that. This one doesn't let you do that. Normally you grab a linear phase EQ that is actually a parametric EQ. Don't ask me why this one is graphic and this one's graphic and this one's parametric, despite the fact that the process or how it looks is kind of counterintuitive. There's an explanation, but it's not really worth talking about right now. But anyway, what you want to do is you want to find that frequency, and you'd find it using the span. So you'd see, you'd hear that kind of tung sound, and you look for it in this area, and you'd see like, oh, there's a peak here. Maybe that's it. And then you find that frequency. It's up in that corner there. And also, if this disappears, sometimes it'll move down to this corner. I was kind of hoping it would do that, but I guess it's because it's frozen. If I turn off hold, it'll do that. No, it's not actually going to do that. Sometimes it'll jump down to the bottom here. So careful about that. But Anyway, so you'll look for that little peak, and then you'll go into your EQ, find the same frequency, and then you'll set a certain band to that frequency and check. Boost it. Does it resonate? Does it emphasize that sound you're trying to get rid of? If it does, then boom, you cut it. And you cut it with a linear phase EQ. Now, it's not very good for illustrative purposes on this one because, as I said, you cannot see how well that's working. There are linear phase EQs that are not graphic equalizers, but since we're just doing a master and we don't have that problem in our track, we don't need one right now. But if you do want to do surgical cuts like that, then I strongly suggest you get a linear phase not graphic equalizer, linear phase parametric equalizer. Man, they're so confusing. I hate the fact that they're kind of backwards in that regard. Okay, so that's kind of what you would do for the linear phase EQ. But if you don't have any of that, and we're still going to use this EQ, but we don't have any of that, what you'll do is you'll kind of be messing with bass. And the reason is because when you start to boost and cut in bass with a regular EQ, you start to get it starts to create those harmonics or overtones. And sometimes that can cause really weird behavior in the low end because of how low frequency waves tend to behave when you cut them and stuff. So what we want to do is use linear phase EQ to kind of balance those out in a very high fidelity manner. So if we do something like this, it'll behave a lot nicer than on a parametric EQ in some cases. Like we could do a little bit more accurate of cutting and boosting. So that's what we're going to use the linear phase EQ for. It's just kind of for our accuracy work. Then our parametric EQ, if we end up using it, we're not going to use it so much for this one, but this one is more designed to kind of gently shape the tone of our track. So I'm going to set this to the default preset again, and we kind of do something like this, like that, and then maybe like that. And if we wanted to do a little bit more of a boost, we boost that up, and then we kind of widen it out a bit, so it's a lot more gradual. So this is going to be what this is best suited for, just kind of generally shaping our tone. And then finally we have our Overtone G Eq, and this one is going to be used for generating harmonics, like I said. And how does that practically play out? If we boost the high end with this one, when we start to actually use this in the next episode, you'll notice that when we boost the high end on this one, it sounds a lot more crispy and it doesn't sound quite as harsh as when we do it on this one. So that's the idea with this. It kind of lets us boost areas and give a certain tone to it. So this is going to be more for like adjusting our track tonally, and like say we want to boost the bass, but we don't want to just shelf the bass up. Then what we do is we'd use this Overtone G Eq, and it boosts the bass and it generate harmonics across the spectrum and kind of enhance that sound. So this is I prefer to use mostly a linear phase EQ and a Overtone G Eq. Sometimes I'll use a regular EQ in between, but typically not so much. I like to work in my high and mids in this one, and then some of my low mids and my bass in this one. That's typically how I'll work with masters. But we've been running for about 13 minutes. Unfortunately, we won't have the time today to get into using these and actually like what we'd end up doing. But just to kind of give you an idea, this is generally actually what I will be doing. They're a little bit exaggerated right now. But you'll find that this is kind of the sort of like, I'm going to be working in this area for this one. I'm going to be working kind of like this for this one, except for I'm going to have these ones more down like that. And then this one, I'm actually not going to do that. What I'm going to more do is go to default here. We're going to set that type to a low pass. We're going to do kind of like that. And then this one's going to be a high pass and like that, and then we might do something in between, but for the most part that's kind of what we're going to be doing. So that's just kind of, if you want to mess around and try these out, that's kind of my suggestion for things you can mess around. Once again, these boosts right here are a little bit too much. This one's way too much, that one's probably too much. These ones right here are not lined up properly, but it is generally this area we'll be working in. So you could try that out in your track. And once again, these are my suggestions based on what I've been listening to with this track. Depending on how your track sounds, you might do it completely different. But anyway, that's pretty much all I'm going to cover for this one. We'll get more into actually how to use these ones, as I said, in the next video. So look forward to that. And then we'll get into some other stuff in following videos just to kind of wrap up the mastering series. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.